Welcome to episode 187 of the Pharmacist Voice podcast. I'm the host, Kim Newlove. Coast Guard pharmacist Stephanie Begansky joins me today to talk about her experience in the Public Health Service Commissioned Corps. She was named the 2022 U.S. Coast Guard Pharmacist of the Year, and she is a role model for the profession of pharmacy. If you are a pharmacist or a pharmacy student exploring your career options, you need to listen to this episode. If you're new to the Pharmacist Voice podcast, welcome! Again, my name is Kim Newlove, and I'm the host. I'm a pharmacist by training, but I'm not in clinical practice anymore. I made a career transition to voice actor and podcast host. I help clients get their point across in the medical space. Among other things, I narrate audiobooks for women pharmacist authors, provide medical narration to clients in the pharmaceutical, biotech, and continuing medical education industries, and I narrate content for explainer videos and e-learning projects. I was inspired by my nonverbal son, who has autism, to combine my background as a pharmacist with my speaking voice and launch my business, The Pharmacist Voice, in 2017. My son Craig helped me realize the power of having a voice and using it. My solo podcast episodes are about some aspect of being a pharmacist, a voice actor, a pharmacist podcaster, or my career transition from pharmacist to voice actor and podcast host. My interview shows feature a variety of people who use their voices to advocate for something, educate in some way, or entertain so that you are inspired to use your voice too. This is episode 187, and you can find the show notes on my website, thepharmacistvoice.com. Just click on the podcast tab and search for episode 187. Without further ado, here's my conversation with Commander Stephanie Begansky. Hi, Stephanie. Welcome to the Pharmacist Voice podcast. How are you?
Hi, Kim. I'm great. Thanks for having me. How are you?
I'm good. I'm in Ohio. Where are you?
I am in North Carolina.
Awesome. I have been looking forward to this interview very much. I got your name from Pam Schweitzer, and she said that you would be an excellent person to speak to about uniformed pharmacist service. So I would love to talk to you about how did you get into what you're doing now?
Yeah, well, I have to thank Rear Admiral Schweitzer for sending my name along. She's one of my longstanding mentors, so I really look up to her. I am in the public health service, which is something that not many pharmacists probably recognize as an opportunity for their career. And it's one that I've thoroughly enjoyed. So I'm currently stationed in North Carolina at the United States Coast Guard base in Elizabeth City, so just outside of the Outer Banks. And if you would have asked me years ago what I wanted to do, I would have told you I want to be a pharmacist at the beach. Okay, which is funny because I finally feel like I made it. But before then, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. I, through school, worked in retail, like many of us, and I loved it. And I thought that's probably the place I wanted to be after graduation. But then in my final year of school, during rotation, I had an opportunity to go to the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration, for a rotation. And I saw folks wearing uniforms. And not everybody was in uniform, so I was a bit confused at first. And then I learned that several of the pharmacists that I was on rotation with actually served in the public health service. So that's how I learned about the public health service. And I could talk on and on about, my point from there to where I am now. But that was my initial introduction to the public health service and government pharmacy.
We had a similar experience. I actually heard about the public health service by working at the Federal Bureau of Prisons. And I was at a men's federal correctional institution, heard about it. And then from there, I thought, I want to go into the Navy. And I didn't make it in because I got disqualified because I have asthma, but you made it into the uniformed service. And I would actually love to hear how you got from that rotation in college to working at a U.S. Coast Guard station in, you said Elizabeth City, North Carolina, right?
Yeah, that's right. So you're right. It feels really weird, like a foreign concept. And how did it happen? And to be honest, I'm really happy that I finally made it to the Coast Guard. I think this is such a unique opportunity that I'm serving in now. But when I first started, like I said, was on rotation at the FDA. And upon graduation, I was offered a position at the FDA with the group that I both did the rotation through and through several other connections in other divisions within the FDA. So I was really fortunate to begin my career serving at the FDA, and then subsequently spent almost 12 years there in several different divisions. So I had a really strong regulatory history, and about when you work for the public health service or any armed, uniformed service, armed or unarmed, I should say, any uniform service, after 20 years, you're eligible to retire with a pension. So at about the halfway point of my career, 10 years, I was sitting at FDA and I was thinking, man, I really just wish I had an opportunity to see some of the clinical sites. And if I don't do it now, I'm never going to do it. So halfway through my 20 years, at the 10-year point, I started looking into clinical opportunities and ended up at the Indian Health Service and working for the Cherokee Indian Hospital in Cherokee, North Carolina.
Wow.
Yeah. So again, this is a little bit of a skip and a hop to how I got to Coast Guard, but I had been interested in Coast Guard for a long time. There's only a handful of pharmacists, 17 total in the Coast Guard. And so I had put an application in, but you kind of have to wait for the older pharmacists, to fall out for a position to open. So
17 openings. Wow. Whew. You're a patient woman.
Right. So it's a small number and they're a really tight group. It's just an awesome team to work with. But I had to wait for some of the older pharmacists to move on and to retire for positions to open. So I went and worked at Indian Health Service for 2 years, only 2 years, and a position opened with Coast Guard. So lucky me. Yeah.
Congrats.
Thank you. And it just coincidentally happened to be another site in North Carolina. So I moved from one side of the state to the other. But it was coincidental that I've been in North Carolina for 4 years now.
Very good. Do you like it well enough to stay?
I do. So I love the Coast Guard. I really, really enjoy the work. It's less clinical and more logistical. So I feel like it's such a great mesh between my work at FDA as more of like a project management kind of regulatory position, and my work in Indian Health Service where it was extreme clinical and I was maybe not as speedy as some of the younger pharmacists that were coming fresh out of school with that. So Coast Guard is awesome. Our tours are 5 years in the Coast Guard, so I'm guaranteed 5 years in this particular site, and then we would move on.
Very good. Well, what's next? Do you want to move on, or how does that work? Do you get assigned, or do you put in, preferences? How does that work?
Yeah, good question. So you put in preferences, right? But since it's such a small group, not everybody's rotating at the same time. So it's not like every position will be open in 2025 when it's my turn to rotate. So that means that things will come up beforehand that may be interesting to me for Coast Guard, like a assignment to for example, Puerto Rico, or they're on a 3-year rotation, or Alaska, it's a 3-year rotation. So I might have an opportunity to put in for an early tour, meaning I can leave this billet, this position, early to take another opportunity, or I can put in for an extension to stay here for a little bit longer. So I'm not exactly sure what's next. Bit of an uneasy spot to be in, but I love it. I'm enjoying my time here.
Well, congratulations on finding this career path that you truly love. And I've got to go back just a little bit, and I want to ask you about something that you have done in your career that is of interest to me. And Rear Admiral Schweitzer told me about this. She told me that you served, at least for some part of your time with the Public Health Service, aboard the US Comfort or Mercy. Is that right?
Yeah, that's true. So early in my FDA career, I was so excited about the public health service and the opportunities like going on the Comfort and the Mercy with the Navy and the other services. And that opportunity did come up for me in 2009. So I was commissioned in 2008. And so I was young in my career and had an opportunity to serve on the USNS Comfort in Central America for about a month. And it was an awesome experience.
Awesome. What did you do aboard there? Oh, first of all, for anybody listening who doesn't know what the Comfort or the Mercy are, what are the Comfort and the Mercy?
Yeah, great question. So the Comfort and the Mercy are basically naval hospital ships, to simplify it. So they're huge, awesome ships that have hospital services aboard them. And often they'll go out for humanitarian missions. So that's what I was serving on when I went. The mission was called Continuing Promise. And we were doing a lot of outreach in communities within Central America, providing humanitarian assistance. There was a group of oral surgeons aboard working with cleft palate patients, so helping some cleft palate patients. So not only did we serve time in a pharmacy on board, but we also went in country and set up for some smaller clinics where physicians, dentists, optometrists would go out in the community and help diagnose or prescribe to patients that maybe didn't have any access to care and had waited years for an opportunity like this to be seen. And in the pharmacy there, we would actually dispense medications to patients. So they were busy, long days, hot days, and really memorable, though. Probably one of the highlights of my career.
I bet. Yeah. Oh my gosh. That just seems like such a great opportunity to serve others. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for your service. It's amazing.
I'm proud to serve.
That is one of the opportunities I wanted by joining the Navy, was to serve aboard one of those ships. And I'm going to try not to get a little verklempt here, but I just would have been so proud, because there's some people that hear the call to serve, and my younger son likes to tell me the country hung up on me. Oh. And when you hear the call to serve, they say, no, we'll pass. But anyways, it's so cool to be able to, I feel like this moment in my life is coming full circle, where I wanted to do this thing and you got to do the thing, and I get to hear about it firsthand. So thank you. You actually really, you made my day. Totally. I don't want to say you made my life, but you made my day. That was awesome.
Yeah, I'm so happy that I could do that for you. But also there are some civilian opportunities, I believe, aboard those deployments. So don't give up. I know the deployments are ongoing. There are, I believe the Comfort is out again. Or it's going to be soon. And I know that there was actually an opportunity again for Public Health Service and Coast Guard pharmacists to join, but we're stretched a little thin with deployments, so they might need a pharmacist.
Oh, hey. How does one find out about opportunities like that? So if I was like, okay, after we get off this call, I'm going to get on the internet and look this up, where would I look?
Yeah, great question. I don't know the for sure answer about that, but I think that it would probably be through like an NGO, a non-governmental organization that you may have to partner with to get on. I don't think it's just like anybody can go sort of thing, but there, I'm sure, are groups that need volunteers for opportunities because the ships will go out for several months at a time. And of course, they don't expect you to stay for the whole time. You could serve just a portion of the time. So I can look into it and send you a link if I can find one to some NGOs or just more information about serving those missions.
Well, thank you. I will follow up with you about that at a later time. Sorry to put
Please
you on the spot there.
No problem.
All right. Well, we talked about that experience with the public health service and the comfort being one of the highlights of your career. Can you tell me about one of the biggest challenges of your career?
Yeah, sure. So, this is a great question, but I think many people will say COVID, right? I think COVID is the default answer right now. I'll tell you, I just had moved to the Indian Health Service, had my first child in 2019, came back from maternity leave, just ready to fully integrate into this clinical world, and then COVID hit. So it was really challenging time, not only for the pharmacy, but the whole world was trying to figure things out, right? Like we didn't know how to do testing, what COVID was, any of that yet. And it's just so happened that both the director and deputy director of the pharmacy were on leave when COVID really, came strong, and they decided to shut the country down for 2 weeks. And so I was in charge. So that was really challenging to kind of fumble with the outpatient pharmacy and try to figure out, what we needed to do to not only protect our pharmacists, the fellow pharmacists, but our patients and our community. And I'll just say it was another highlight of my career because I was really able to work with the tribal leaders and the hospital leadership. And I was proud to implement, along with my colleagues, one of the first testing sites in the US. And it was just super cool to be supported in such a strange time with innovative care for our community. So yeah, that was definitely a challenge, but it also, again, turned into a highlight for me.
Yeah, that's a crisis for sure. Yeah, COVID, oh my gosh, nobody knew anything. And yeah, to be able to take on a leadership role and make a difference, that takes a special person.
Yeah, it was interesting.
I'm sure. There's something about the uniformed service where it's just kind of not an option to take a pass. You have to face it, that you are the people who run toward the danger, because you heard the call to serve. And thank God for people like you, really. And I'm not trying to be too dramatic or anything like that, but you don't get to call in sick. That's your job,
Yeah.
You have to lead.
Yeah, it really is. And public health service, sometimes takes a back seat to our bigger sister services. But like you said, we might not be running into bullets, but disease is where we're running towards, right? And trying to help protect everybody on a really different level. So it's interesting work. And you're right. We don't call out, we call in. And it's really cool.
Is that a saying by any chance in the Coast Guard?
No, but I liked it. It sounded good.
I think you need to make a T-shirt with that on it.
I think you're right.
Oh, that's great. Well, thank you for sharing that challenge. That's great.
Sure.
Yeah, I like that it turned into one of the highlights of your career too, because, I didn't know where you were going with that. But hey, how does one succeed in the public health service or even the Coast Guard as a pharmacist?
Yeah, I think this is a saying, being fluid, right? Semper Gumby, like just being able to go with the flow is the key. You can't being a pharmacist, we're all type A, right? Like we all are. It's just comes with it. And sometimes it's hard to, just be flexible and go with the flow. But I think that's really the key to success in both the public health service, the Coast Guard, or any career with the federal government, where it's just like a, hurry up and wait and then run situation for us. So interesting always, and just being fluid and being able to fill in any gaps at all is what you need to do.
Okay, great. And what is it like to be up for promotions and to advance your rank and all that sort of thing? I mean, what's your rank right now?
Yeah, so currently I'm a commander, and wow, a lot of my fellow pharmacists that hear this in the public health service will be able to, empathize with me, because it's a very difficult time for promotions. So it goes through ebbs and flows like any other, I think, career or company, you could call it, even though we're the government. And there's only so many people that can promote. There are benchmarks that come in. So, how to simplify this, I don't know. But let's just say that essentially when you come in, you are commissioned in the public health service. Everybody's commissioned as a lieutenant. Okay. And then when you want to promote, you have to serve a certain number of years in a position or in a billet. And you have to serve a certain number of years of training and experience. It's a little complicated how it works. But when you're up for promotion, it's competitive. So you compete against all the other pharmacists, whether they're clinical, regulatory, or other, something in between. You're all going against each other for promotion. So it can be cutthroat, but really, I think that the tide has shifted and we all want everybody to do their best and promote, and everyone tries to help each other. There's a lot of paperwork. There's a lot of little things you have to do. And
wait, the government has a lot of paperwork?
Yeah,
What?
I know. It's so mysterious. Like promotion is just like this mysterious beast for everybody. And you get paid based on your rank, but also your years in service. So, it's easy to say, oh, just do what you're doing, do what you love, and hopefully promotion comes. But it's kind of what the truth is,
Success looks like advancing in rank, right? But it's also one of the pitfalls. You got to wait your turn. You got to meet the criteria. There's a little bit of competition. I get it. Now,
Yes.
Along the same lines, what are some of the other pitfalls of being in the public health service?
Yeah, I love this career so much because you can move around, right? Like I said, I did regulatory at FDA. I worked at Indian Health Service. I'm now in the Coast Guard. There's opportunities to work at the CDC, Center for Medicaid and Medicare. You said Bureau of Prisons, right? So I feel like if you're not happy in your position in the public health service, it's time to move on. But you can still stay in the public health service and you can work for countless number of organizations doing any random thing. There's literally endless opportunities. So when you say, what are the pitfalls other than competitive promotion? I can't really name one. It's a fun career. It's a different career. And I think all of us are just trying to make it to our 20 years to start career number 2, which nobody really knows what that is either. So.
Yeah. Well, it could be anything. You get such great training at public health service. But one of the pitfalls that I kind of see as a civilian is that when you do want to take a different opportunity, you need to relocate.
Yes.
I think depending on how you look at it, it could be a pitfall or it could be like a great opportunity.
Yeah, awesome point. So for my personality type, I think that's the coolest part of this. And my husband would say, this is the worst. I want roots. Like, please give me roots. Let me grow. Like, this is really hard. And now that we have children, I get it. It's harder, right? Like finding your community and finding your people is a little bit more difficult with every relocation. And I do crave roots sometimes, but if you knew me, you know my feet don't stay planted very long anywhere I go. I'm always into something different. So yeah, relocation can be tough. But like you said, it's also just another cool opportunity to see something different, experience something different. I think when you're younger, it's better to do all the relocating and see all the things.
Yes, yes. And mindset is important too, because if you know that you don't like to relocate, I think, like you said earlier, it may not be the right career for you. Maybe it's time to move on.
Right. Yeah, that is one unique thing about the public health service, though, is you can stay in one place. It's not going to help with you meeting those benchmarks and maybe being promoted, but you can dictate your own path. So for Coast Guard, you can't. 5 years is kind of your number of years in one spot. But for public health service, broader, you kind of can. You could homestead in DC and change agencies or change positions. So there are some opportunities to relocate without geographically relocating.
Okay. Well, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Stephanie, there are a lot of pharmacists out there looking to do something else, something other than traditional clinical practice in a retail environment or a hospital or, compounding or whatever. You work in the public health service. Would you recommend that to somebody, a pharmacist who's looking to do something different?
Thanks, Kim. Yeah, I really can't emphasize enough how much I think that this opportunity to work in the public health service can really fit so many pharmacists, right? So if they're looking to do something different, I would highly recommend looking into the public health service because, as I mentioned in some of our other discussion, maybe they can work in a clinical setting if that's their interest, or they could do something regulatory. And maybe they're thinking, well, I couldn't work for the FDA. I don't know the first thing about regulatory work, but there are opportunities at the FDA, or I'm sure many of the agencies, for on-the-job training, right? So if you have a personality type or a learning type where you're able to quickly adapt and learn on the job, the public health service might really be something that I would recommend you look into as a pharmacist that's looking for something different than your traditional retail or clinical setting.
Very good. Yeah. Well, once you went in, clearly you were hooked because what, has it been 15 years now or 16?
Yeah, I'm at 14 and a half, not counting. So like I said, we all look for that 20-year mark, but I'm on the downhill and I've actually been stressed a little bit more often thinking about retirement and what happens after the 20 years and setting myself up for some success, after that, because like any transitional point, we can serve 20 or more, but 20 is kind of the point where you need to start thinking about what's next, and it's going to sneak up, goes fast.
Yeah. Any idea what you might like to do next?
No, I always laugh. I just say I want to hike and be a travel agent. Like, I don't really want anything to do with pharmacy, but that's not true. I just don't know what it is yet that I want to do.
Yeah. Hey, you know what? Just like these high school kids, maybe you need a gap year too.
That's a good idea. Now we're talking.
Why not?
Great idea. Why not? So, Kim, what was it like when you did your rotation at Bureau of Prisons, and how did that feel, and what were your thoughts after you did that rotation?
I loved that rotation so much. My experience was amazing. I was working in a men's federal correctional institution. It was not maximum security, so I could walk among the inmates. What was it like to work in the hospital facility? It was interesting because I was the one behind bars. I was literally in the pharmacy with the bars so that, inmates couldn't just walk in and grab whatever. It was interesting to see how few medications were actually in the pharmacy. My pharmacist was creative and resourceful with a very small formulary. She was not shy to put me to work. She loved having me there, not just to count pills and counsel people, but also to look things up. Because when you have a limited formulary and you have somebody who needs a cholesterol medication and they have hepatic insufficiency, like what are your options? And can you show me? So there were references. It was interesting to see which references. This was back in 2001 when we had paper references. And I got to witness all kinds of stuff with all the doctors. We had a doctor named Paul Harvey, Dr. Paul Harvey. Yeah. Which is a great name. Yeah, I guess he had a radio program a long time ago. Not this Paul Harvey, no. But Dr. Paul Harvey would have me in his office, and I would get to see him as he cared for the patients, and he would show things to me. It just seemed like there was a lot of teamwork, like the pharmacist, here, go spend some time with a doctor. And we had a lot of physician's assistants who were foreign medical doctors, but the U.S., I guess it would be Public Health Service or Department of Justice, whichever one, employed them as physician's assistants. So we had guys from Costa Rica and Greece and all kinds of places. It was really interesting, like a melting pot. And because they were from different places and some of the inmates didn't always speak English, we were able to witness these communication barriers coming down because people spoke Spanish or whatever was needed. I got to see my first ever positive TB test because somebody grew up in Cuba and they were exposed to TB. And so I guess they forever have a positive TB test. That was interesting. I got to watch the inmates take their insulin and make sure that their syringes went in my collection receptacle. That was interesting because you don't want inmates having sharp objects out in the general population. I got to meet people basically who were in there for serious crimes, but they were sober. A lot of people commit crimes when they are on drugs, and that's very sad. But I got to learn about that as, a pharmacy student in a federal prison. It's kind of an interesting thing. Sometimes you read about these things in the newspaper, but you meet the person who committed the crime and hear about how they don't remember doing it. But of course, somebody caught it on tape or whatever, and they are so sorry. That's a part of things that you don't get to see. Yeah. But as for the care, there's a lot of care in the healthcare in the Federal Bureau of Prisons, a lot of creative, resourceful, and talented people there. Thanks for asking.
Yeah, no problem. That's what I was hoping you would say, because I actually think that expands across the populations that the Public Health Service serves, right? Like, same thing. We still have a limited formulary in the Coast Guard, and we are short physicians, and we use a lot of PAs and actually have a lot of opportunity as a pharmacist to practice a more advanced pharmacy care because of the shortage of providers. And so I'm so happy to hear that you had an awesome experience, because I haven't had the chance to see Bureau of Prisons, and just think that it's kind of the story all the way across the board for public health service and the populations we serve. So awesome.
Oh, I could talk for hours about my experience, but I will spare you. And I must say, I spent a lot of time in the dental clinic, which was fascinating. I had never seen meth mouth before. And of course, you get your inmates with meth mouth. And I had never seen a 22-year-old young man with no teeth. And I got to see one in prison.
Yeah. Yep, you'll see some different things, that's for sure. The underserved populations are definitely happy to have providers that care like you when you were a student. So it's awesome.
I was happy to be there. Yep. It was a great experience. I didn't sign up for that one. I got kind of assigned to it because I had retail and hospital experience, but I'm so glad that I had that experience because it was fantastic. And I still, to this day, look back on it with positive memories, for sure.
Awesome.
Yep. Well, Stephanie, as we start to wrap this up, I just want to ask you a general question about advice for pharmacists, either new grads or currently practicing. What advice do you have, just pharmacist to pharmacist, for them?
Yeah, good question. And I think you kind of alluded to it in your last little snippet about the Bureau of Prisons and not signing up for it, right? So sometimes as a pharmacist or a pharmacy student, there will be opportunities that are presented to you. And I would just advise you to try to make the best of any situation or, opportunity that you have. So, there's a thing about being able to say no, but there's also a thing about trying to just say yes. And even if you're not sure you're qualified or that you know exactly what to do, nobody else does either. And you can do it. So I would just advise people to take an opportunity, put in an application, make a connection. Networking is so important. And if you see somebody in a position that you wish you were in, cold call them, reach out to them. Don't be afraid. Pharmacy is still a small world, and I'm sure that we're all willing to take a few minutes to help out a fellow pharmacist.
Would you mind if people contact you via LinkedIn? I mean, is that something I could put in the show notes for you?
Sure, that would be absolutely fine. LinkedIn would be great. I'm happy to provide my email. And anybody can reach out with questions, opportunities, or whatever they need.
I will do that. Yeah, I'll get that info and put that in the show notes. Stephanie, is there anything else that you'd like to share as we wrap this up?
Kim, one thing I forgot to say when you asked me about that deployment on the Comfort and also my time in Coast Guard, is I've had an opportunity to fly on some helicopters and some planes and
how cool.
Yeah, super cool things that you don't get to do. Like right now I'm talking to you and I had to step outside, right? There's not that many pharmacists that get outside or get fresh air or get to ride on a helo or a plane as part of their work. And it's just super cool. Definitely a fun thing that you get to do in these more unique positions. So if someone's considering it, the cool stuff really does happen. So do it.
What's a helo? I just got to ask.
Just a helicopter.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's cool.
A helicopter.
Wow. Well, that's cool. Yeah. That's some adventurous stuff you get to do there.
Yeah, it's really fun.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing about how you use your voice as a pharmacist in the public health service. Congratulations on your awesome U.S. Coast Guard assignment that you absolutely love. I hope you have a fantastic sprint to the finish in the last 6 years of your career here. And thanks again for being on the Pharmacist Voice podcast.
Thanks for having me, Kim.
You're welcome. Take care. I'd like to share some final thoughts with you. First of all, I enjoyed hearing about Stephanie's different roles and settings that she's had during her 14 years in the Public Health Service Commissioned Corps. Second, I think it's pretty neat that once upon a time, she wanted to be a pharmacist at the beach, and hey, she's there now. How cool is that? That makes me smile. Third, Stephanie clearly excels in her role. She was named the U.S. Coast Guard Pharmacist of the Year in 2022. Stephanie, congratulations on that honor. That is amazing. Stephanie is certainly a role model for the profession of pharmacy. Fourth and finally, I want to say that the Public Health Service Commissioned Corps pharmacists do amazing things. Stephanie is the third of hopefully many Commissioned Corps pharmacists who have been on this podcast. They are strong advocates for public health, and they are truly out there saving the world. Big thanks to everyone in the Public Health Service for the important work that you do. If you're interested in the Public Health Service Commissioned Corps, please visit usphs.gov. That's usphs.gov. Or get in touch with Stephanie directly. In the show notes today, you will find Stephanie's email address and a link to her LinkedIn profile so you can reach out and connect. Also in the show notes today is a link to usphs.gov and my social media links. Please feel free to reach out to me and connect as well. Now, if you know someone who would like this episode or needs to hear it, please share it with them. One last thing, if you like this podcast, please subscribe to or follow the Pharmacist Voice podcast on your favorite podcast player and YouTube to get each new episode right when it comes out. Thank you for listening today. I'll be back next week with a pronunciation episode. I'll talk to you then.